Professor James Lindsay was one of the first people to start calling out the problem with the woke right. The woke right are pretty much extremists that, in typical horseshoe theory fashion, have more in common with the left than they actually do with the people who identify with MAGA and Republicans. Horseshoe theory is that the far left and the far right are closer to each other than they are to the center. Last year, I was on Turning Point USA's annual AmFest, America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona. And an organization I do a lot of work with, Israel 365, was hosting the Sabbath meals, the Shabbos meals, for all the Jews who were there. There was some kind of mix-up where apparently there was one for the Messianic Christians and there was one for the Jews. And some of the Jews showed up at the Sabbath meal for the Messianic Christians, and some of the Messianic Christians showed up for the one for the Jews. So there was a lot of people who were confused when they came to the Jewish one, especially because it was done Orthodox Jewish style, which is traditional Judaism. James Lindsay came walking in, and I assumed he was one of the people who got confused between one or the other. But I asked James Lindsay, I'm like, hey, dude, what are you doing here? And he said, I picked a side, and I want to learn more about the side that I picked. Because he's been the one pushing back against anti-Semitism on the right, on the woke right, longer than most other people in mainstream conservatism of the modern era. And we had a great time together. And actually, something I remember specifically was that night, there's a lot of chanting that's done as part of Friday night services. And James Lindsay told me he enjoyed it so much that he actually downloaded them for him and his wife to listen to. James isn't Jewish, but he saw what was going on with the woke right, and he decided he had to say something and stop the insanity he saw going on. A lot of people are now waking up to the fact that he was correct in everything he was calling out even a year plus ago, that now that we're seeing what's going on with Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and all that, and the Heritage Foundation coming to defend them. So I had the opportunity to speak to James Lindsay about that. Plus, I had the opportunity to talk to him because he recently returned from a trip to Israel. Give a listen to my interview with Professor James Lindsay. James Lindsay, great to see you again, my man.
Yeah, great to see you too.
So tell me, this is something that, I know you from all your exposure of the DEI and critical race theory in education. Why'd you decide to take on this fight of the woke right?
Because I believe in America and what it stands for, and these guys don't. I mean, that's really the answer. I saw these guys coming kind of a mile away. I first met unambiguous, cadre of guys that we would say are woke right now, probably in early 21. And they told me my work, all this stuff you just said was great. They said, that's all really great. It's very useful to us, but you're not one of us. So in the end, we're going to force convert you or kill you. And I was like, well, we should pay attention to these guys. That's serious. And just kind of watched them grow over the last 4 years, 5 years now almost, and tried to sound the alarm because it's not the direction MAGA needs to take. It's not the direction America is going to go. And so, just sound the alarm, try to stop the enemy from within. I've come to believe that they couldn't take MAGA from the outside, so they're trying to subvert it from the inside now. That's kind of my, 10-second explanation as to what's happening. And I thought, well, we should stop that if we can, especially how much of it was like noticer stuff, right? So even back in 21, they're like, James, you do so much on the Frankfurt School and the critical theorists. That's great. What religion were they? And I was like, I don't know, communist. Apparently that wasn't what they wanted to hear. So it wasn't hard to figure out what they wanted and what that represents. And, I thought that maybe I was raised right. I don't know. I just always thought that was wrong. We don't blame Jews for everything.
Is this something you saw all the DEI stuff, critical race theory stuff before a lot of other people did? You noticed it. Sorry to use their word, but you saw it was going on before anybody else. With this stuff at the beginning, you were attacked. And now so many people are going, holy cow, we didn't realize how mainstream this has become in MAGA and how right you actually were. Are there people who are saying, we don't want to talk to you anymore? We want to distance ourselves from you because of this?
Well, actually, we're kind of getting past that point. That's been most of my last year, actually. A whole bunch of people. I had somebody, we were at America Fest. We saw each other last year. I had an old friend there say, all my friends, this is an exact quote, all my friends hate you now. It's bad for my brand to be seen with you. And so I had lots of that for like a year, year and a half now. And now I'm at this weird boomerang point where, they say that nobody forgives you for being right, but I've probably had 300 or 400 apologies. So people are noticing that I was onto something. And, like you said, nobody really was, I saw this coming and all this, whatever. The biggest thing people said is they don't have any power. They're not interesting. It's a distraction. Don't worry about it. We've got elections to win. They thought it wasn't going to become a big deal. And they and I differed was that I thought it was going to be a big deal. I thought it was the same dynamic that happened on the left, and that I saw nothing particularly encouraging from the reactions to it that I was seeing from, conservatives to say that they were, automatically immune or something like that. So the same dynamic should play out the same way if there's not, clarity to be able to resist it. And I didn't see that clarity, so I was very concerned.
There's an analogy I use all the time, which is the new Superman movie. I don't know if you saw it, but in the new Superman movie, Superman gets kidnapped by Lex Luthor, taken to his lair. And what you can't figure out through the movie is everybody on the streets is very, very happy with Superman, but online they're bashing Superman. And he finds out that Lex Luthor has a monkey bot farm that's writing all the bad things about Superman. And it's the same kind of thing with me. I mean, I know people are going to come up and they're usually not going to say to your face, even though they sometimes do, the awful things. But I get so much love about Israel. I get so much love about being Jewish, especially from my Christian friends. And then I go online. It's like a whole different world. Do you think this is the majority? Do you think this is being boosted by bots? Do you think this is something that's slowly becoming the majority? What's your take on what's going on with the woke right?
I think it is overwhelmingly boosted by bots, primarily. But it's one of these things where over time it grows and grows and grows, and it kind of catches, critical mass, and then it's off to the races on its own. So it's becoming more and more mainstream, particularly with conservatives under 30. Over 30, it's still extraordinarily rare, except with, grifters who want to pander to these guys, to these young guys that are now off the chain. But I think that it is largely encouraged and very artificially incubated by a variety of dynamics. It would take a long time, I think, to explain all of them, but by bot farms and by networks of people who maybe don't have as many scruples as they should. I think a lot of people are being paid to promote these narratives just straight up. But I also think there are a lot of people who are in kind of like influencer share networks, and they know if they don't play along, they get kicked out. But that's how they make all their ad revenue off of X. So they aren't going to. And so you've got like a lot of weird forces going on, but overwhelmingly artificial, in my opinion, but becoming real with MAGA under 30. Probably, I would say 15 to 20% of young men are at least partially infected by this new woke mind virus.
That was something that worried me when I saw the Turning Point event this week, where the questions that were being asked of Vice President JD Vance. And the questions that were being asked were all exactly by the people you're talking about, under 30, on the right, probably subscribe to Tucker Carlson or whatever other show it is. And they're asking just like they're little bots on repeat. So when you have these big voices saying these kind of things, when you have Tucker Carlson bringing in Nick Fuentes, do you think it's making it more mainstream? Or do you think a lot of people are opening their eyes and saying, holy cow, we didn't realize how bad this was?
I'm seeing a lot more of the second one, actually. So what you see with these events, this is a really exquisite dynamic. We are seeing especially these Turning Point events, and you're having these question and answer session of the speaker afterwards, and you have this guy ask a question, or 3 or 4 guys, and like you said, it sounds like it just came straight from the bot manual. They're human beings who've been botified, and they're just repeating this kind of, word salad jargon kind of laden, well, if Israel was really doing it in Gaza, whatever. Okay, here's the thing. Those are people who are highly motivated to do that, in many cases who are being put up to this by their cult leaders, like Nick Fuentes. He calls it groiping, like a verb. It's and so you're seeing when you see 3 or 4 or 5 of these people at an event with thousands of people, and they're the ones who end up asking the questions. They're doing it intentionally to get that attention on themselves, to make it look like this is something that's prominent. But when you saw, for example, Glenn Beck answer these questions rather admirably, the crowd explodes like, their team just scored a touchdown at the Super Bowl for Glenn's very pro-Israel answer. So it's not representative of the crowd. So this is the same dynamic that you saw with queer activists in particular that would go to events and then ask some uncomfortable question about, gays or lesbians or sexual whatever. It's the same technique, but the goal is to make it appear that, like, oh my gosh, tons of these young people think this. Look how many of them stood up to ask questions, when what you have is a selection bias. Nick says, go and groyp, Groyp, like groiper as a verb. Go groip Turning Point events. The groiping of Turning Point events will continue. So he's encouraging any of his followers that are in any of these, cities or whatever, and maybe people are being flown in. I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised at all to then show up and make sure that they're going to go ask a question, and it's going to be one of these questions that puts the speaker on the spot. So this is another element of this astroturfing of this phenomenon. So my hope and what I'm seeing is people are waking up really fast. It's like Tucker crossed lines faster than people could handle the lines he was crossing and adjust to them, and it just seems full steam ahead. I have watched in the past month the fight against the woke right kind of go from me and Seth Dillon to an army, and it's very encouraging.
Yeah, I would actually tend to agree with you. In fact, JD Vance was getting some hate last night online for his answers. And I said, well, guys, he's not as committed to this as the rest of us are. And in addition to that, he was flat out saying the people like Tucker Carlson who said we're going to get dragged into World War III, it never happened. President Trump proved them wrong. And I'd rather have those kind of answers, the kind of stuff you get from, Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson or anything. And for me, it was encouraging because people have been kind of wary because of his relationship with Tucker Carlson. But I go, he's saying all the right things just because it's not part of his being, his essence, as it may be with some of us. I say, give the guy a break. Your take on it.
JD plays the middle, in my opinion, more than he should, but he did directly say that these guys, the panicans, as they get called, freaked out about the Iran strike and said it's going to be World War III. And he named Tucker by name. These guys were wrong about everything. And it's presumable that they're going to be wrong about other things. And so, not to get so worked up about it. So, I reserve concerns about his, overall presentation, but not those answers to those questions.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. So switching gears, you're a little jet lagged right now because you just got off a plane, got back from the Holy Land. You didn't even get paid $7,000. When I found out about the $7,000, I said, wait a minute, there's money in sticking up for Israel. I wish somebody told me about it. I would have been happy to take a few bucks because I do it anyway. So tell me, what was the most surprising thing about your trip?
Oh my gosh, the most surprising thing about my trip. There's a lot of things to choose from, but I think the most surprising thing, I knew there's a difference between like the propaganda and the reality, right? There's some distance. The propaganda says X, reality is Y. They're a little bit apart, but it's more like, to stick with letters, it's more like the propaganda is A and reality is Z. It's like they're as far apart as possible. The most shocking moment, I think, in that regard was when I was sitting there in the morning. One morning I woke up, pretty early. I got on social media and I'm just kind of flipping through, looking through the feed on Twitter, and something had made all the groypers and woke right guys go nuts, and they're talking about Israel and whatever Israel's allegedly done and is doing. And I'm just sitting there like, this is so fake, I can't read it. And all of a sudden I understood why Israelis aren't winning the PR war. It's like, how do you even answer things that are so not real that like you can't recognize them? It just looked like cartoons or something, like just completely fake. So the distance between propaganda and reality, I knew there was some. I didn't know that it's like this complete invention. Like it's the fakest thing I've ever heard. And that, subsequent to that, we could say so many different things that shocked me about how kind of incredible Israel is. There's this weird is like real, like good, healthy, normal, positive masculinity there that like characterizes so many of the men. They're like religious and family oriented and have 18 billion children, and they are warm and friendly and philosophically literate and theologically grounded. They're talking about, the portion that, for the reading every week, talking about Genesis as we're going through Genesis. And so we're all having these theological conversations. And then they're like, then October 7th happened. And so I just immediately got on the phone, called headquarters, found out where to go, got my M4, and left. And it's like they're all secretly in the reserve. So it's like, they go for 5 days a week or whatever and shoot terrorists, come home, pray over their children, have a loving Shabbat. And then the next day they like try to handle some of their business affairs and regular worldly stuff. And then it's back to terrorists. And it's just like, it's just normal. And so that's like this weird masculinity thing that's like they're so connected to reality. That's a huge thing. The deep connection to both history and reality, but then like the cutting edge of like technology. There's all these kind of strange old and new at the same time paradoxes I haven't quite worked out yet. The whole place is just kind of staggeringly interesting in ways that you just wouldn't expect. But the distance between propaganda and reality and that what happened on October 7th, and you just pick the date, you just kind of, open a calendar for the last 50 years and thumb through it and pick a date, and there's probably something there too. All this valor and these attacks, and this is part of daily life, but nobody's really scared. It's this very strange thing that just doesn't match what anybody says about Israel. Israel's just kind of amazing. And then it's like, are you hungry? And it's like, no, not again. We're not. And because they're feeding you like every 5 minutes almost, it seems. Everybody's taking care of everybody else. And life loving. The emphasis on not only are they coming home and praying over their children, but they're like agonizing over trying to get civilians out of the way of their strikes in advance. Who in what war do you advertise your strike in advance? Because nobody does that, but Israel does because they don't want anybody to die. I had this moment. So we're walking through Kibbutz Be'eri, which got utterly destroyed by Hamas on October 7th. And we walk under a banana tree that's still standing there. And one of the guys, Israeli guy, points up and sees there's a bunch of bananas coming down on it. And he's like, for the monkeys in Gaza. And then this other guy who's a captain immediately in the IDF immediately is like, no, we don't think like that. We don't talk like that. They're human beings. They're not monkeys. And it's like, we're in this place where all these people just got slaughtered 2 years ago. Huge firefights, destroyed everything. And then it's like, no, we don't talk. They're not monkeys. They're people. Like, that's literally an active war zone that ended a week before, and you don't dehumanize your enemy. Like, that's Israel.
Yeah. And I got to say is that until you go there, you just don't get it. A lot of people don't. They really, really don't. And my son's actually in the Army right now. And seeing it through those eyes gives me a very, very different perspective. I remember the first time I interviewed Charlie Kirk was actually at a Turning Point convention, the first time I went. And he said to me, well, you're probably from a family of like 11 kids. And I said, well, actually, I'm the oldest of 9. And he goes, well, how many kids do you have? You probably have like 20. And I'm like, no, I only have 3. And he goes, well, what the hell happened to you? Because that's the truth, is that in the Jewish world, I'm kind of the minority with having so few kids. But that's what people don't get. It's about the family connection. It's about that. I mean, you and I have discussed Jewish prayer before. You and I have discussed Jewish music before. What was your favorite sight to see while you were there from a religious perspective?
Gosh, it's hard to say too, because we got to do some cool stuff. We got to go down we did the full City of David tour. Like, we got to go to stuff that's not open. I think it might be open now, but it wasn't open then. They just opened some new stuff, so I don't know where that cuts. But we got to go down underneath onto the road of pilgrimage up from the pool of Siloam up to the temple. And so we got to see this, Herod laid this road over 2,000 years ago. It's still basically perfect. It's literally under a street, in Jerusalem up above your head. So it's in a tunnel, but it used to be open to the air. And it just when the Romans came and destroyed it in 70 AD, they just filled it in with dirt and rubble and all this, broken pottery and all this stuff. But then you start hearing the stories about how, like, literally there was a remnant that hid in the sewage tunnels to fight to the very last. And they were like the very last people other than at Masada that the Romans were able to get rid of. And so, we were down under there and getting to see that and walk through the tunnel. We did the little thing where you walk up the tunnel, the sewage tunnel, to the Western Wall where it's still underground. And, you've got the stones that were thrown off the top in the destruction of the temple in 70 AD that have plunged through and broken the surface, and there they are sticking down. And you come up out of the tunnel, and then there's the stone, the other side of it sticking down into the ground. And so, this whole, I think that was probably, as far as like a kind of religious site, just the whole story of the temple over all the years. But what catches you is where we started that day with our tour was we were over across on the mountain from which it said Abraham first saw the mountain that's now where the temple stands, or stood, I guess, where the Dome of the Rock is. And so he's over there. So we start there and we just get kind of told this, that it doesn't register. We're jet lagged. We don't know what's going on. Then we go over to the wall, and then, we look back and there's that mountain. And then it's just all of a sudden it hits you. It's like, holy crap, this happened here. Right. And then it's just one story after another. So I think it was really, this, from the religious perspective, really the story of the temple. We didn't get to go see like the David and Goliath place or all this. So we had limited time. So for what we got to see, just, I mean, it's interesting because you see this 70 AD, the Jews getting wrecked for being Jews. I mean, to be fair, we'll give the Romans just a tiny bit of credit. The Jews did like completely wreck one of their regiments, and the Romans don't really put up with that. But there were reasons for that too, and it was that the Jews were being Jews in Jerusalem, and therefore the Romans had to come destroy them. And it's just this. You just get this feeling of this immediate connection to 3,000 plus years of history that has this kind of repeating refrain of everybody got mad at the Jews for being Jewish and came and killed them. And so that's like, there's something really like deep there. But I think everybody says this, maybe I'm wrong, but it's just, you're walking around and you're like, wait, what? Like Jesus got betrayed by Judas right there, like here on this rock, like right there. Yeah. Yes. Well, what? It's just that sense of living biblical history that archaeology, like they made some discovery while we were there. Actually, like literally a couple hours later, we found out they like dug something up. Like I think while we were physically at the site, that some huge proof of some story in the Tanakh that I don't know what story it is, but it's like the archaeology just keeps confirming it. Right? It's like this stuff really happened, and it really happened like right here where your feet are, and these stones are really smooth and polished because millions of people walked on this road or pilgrimage or whatever. Holy crap. So it makes it real, right?
Yeah. And you happen to pick my favorite tourist spot in Israel, archaeological spot, which is, I hadn't seen the Pilgrim Road till 1 or 2 years ago when you started getting the tour. In fact, a friend of mine was your tour guide, and she took us down there too. And she showed us in the stuff that had filled in that place. I don't know if she did it with you, but you grab something that you think is a rock and it breaks apart in your hand. And it's fossilized ash from the destruction of the temple. And you're just like, wow, more proof. I mean, this all really happened here. And then you pop up when you come up the Pilgrim Road from the mikveh, from the pool at the bottom, and you come on up and you're in the marketplace where they would buy what they need to do. And it's not like some tour sites where you go, well, this happened here and it's a pile of rubble and you can't see what it is. You could see where the market stalls were. You could see where the pools were, the mikvahs, the ritual pools that people would go to. And it goes, this actually happened here. And it really is very faith affirming. And for all my Jewish friends, for all my Christian friends who go there, they just go, wow, you see history in action, and you really can't describe it until somebody actually goes there to see it with their own two eyes. So, James, I guess in final thoughts, just before we let you go, and I really appreciate you taking all the time. First, I want to say is that it's amazing having a friend like you. I'm so glad I met you all those years ago and was able to interview you. And we have this relationship where we can talk about this stuff. But also, I don't think you understand how much it means to even somebody like me who has a public profile and stuff, to see somebody like you who is so well respected in MAGA, in conservative movement, in the Republican Party, in the US, just coming out and taking your own time and taking all the flack for us. And saying, I'm going to stand up for what's right because there's a lot of people who don't. And I just want you to know how much that means to us, and say how much it meant to see you walk in the same places I walked, to seeing the same things I saw and taking it so personally. It really just, affirming is the wrong word. It's inspiring. It's really, really inspiring. And I really hope that we get to have another Shabbos dinner together again at Turning Point USA or whatever event it is coming up soon.
I hope so too. I'll tell you yes, the most surprising order, but the most inspiring, I was inspired by my trip to Israel. And the most inspiring moment, I kind of wish we had organized things a little bit different. Like we would all have been crying because we did all the like hard stuff, the Nova Festival, the Gaza envelope, the Lebanese border, Syrian border, Judea, Samaria later. But that first night after we went to the temple and we saw all of the old Jerusalem stuff, and we went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Then that night, we went to Yad Vashem. And so we kind of had a rushed tour because it was getting late, and you don't want to get locked in Yad Vashem. That's probably not a good place to sleep. It's a bad night at the museum. So we zoom back, and we do like parts of it really seriously, but we kind of zoom through a little bit of it. But we walked through the whole memorial. And I'm sure you've been there, but for people who haven't, when you come out the other side, it's this long triangular type building. When you come out, you're on this balcony and you're just looking at like a section of Jerusalem. You're not looking at like the dome. You're not looking at something special in particular. You're just looking at some Jerusalem, and life is happening. And it happened that it got dark while we were in there. So it was nighttime. Cars are driving by their headlights. The city lights are off in the distance. And the tour guide was like, "What do you see?" And it finally registered with me. Like, I got it. And I'm just like, Am Israel Chai. Like, that's what I see. Everyday life is you walk through the Holocaust and everyday life's on the other side. And that's the Jewish people. That's Israel. Like, that's the most inspiring part, I think, of the whole trip for me.
Well, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing to hear. And I like your pronunciation too. I'm glad the trip had that kind of effect where you can get the high out there.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Hey, that was pretty good. I mean, at the RNC, I was walking around and people saw my kippah and they would be saying, Am Yisrael Chai. And I was just kind of cracking up about that. But James, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. Appreciate your advocacy. Appreciate you being a friend. And I love your content even when you're not talking about Israel. And everybody should follow you over on social media. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.